So here's the real question. This entire saga forces onto the table, and it's bigger than one award. Was Rodri's Ballon d'Or genuinely deserved on footballing merit? A defensive midfielder finally getting recognised for a position that almost never wins individual awards? Or was Vinícius Júnior denied the trophy he'd earned because European football institutions still don't fully know how to reward a black Brazilian winger who has spent his career fighting racism on the exact same stages that were supposed to be celebrating him? Both things can be partially true at once, and that's exactly why this rivalry refuses to die. It's not really about a single ceremony anymore. It's about restaurant footage that showed real contempt. It's about a quote suggesting a player facing racial abuse should simply focus on football. It's about a banner mocking someone's pain and a casual very good approving it on live television. It's about a goal celebration a year later that turned pain into a statement. Every piece of this story adds another layer, and none of it is going away before that possible 2026 final if these two paths cross on football's biggest stage. This isn't a rivalry that stays inside the sport. It touches identity, race, institutional bias in European football, and two of the most talked about footballers on the planet. That's exactly why it hits so much harder than a typical individual award controversy ever could. Now it's your turn. Who actually deserved that Ballon d'Or in 2024, Rodri or Vinícius? Was Rodri's comment about Vinícius needing to focus on football fair criticism, or something much worse dressed up as advice? Drop your honest opinion in the comments below. We read every single one, and if this breakdown opened your eyes to a side of this story you hadn't fully connected before, share this video with another football fan who needs to see it. See you in the next one. Fast forward to 2026. Real Madrid faced Manchester City again at the Etihad. Same stadium, same rivalry, same history hanging over every second of the match. This time Real Madrid win 2-1, and when Vinícius finds the net, he doesn't just celebrate a goal, he delivers a message that's been building for over a year. His celebration directly mocked the crying chants City fans had thrown at him during their previous meeting, flipping the script in front of the very crowd that once tried to break him. Speaking afterward, he made the intent unmistakably clear. Because football is very long, and last season they provoked me. Today I was able to do the celebration I felt was necessary. No ambiguity. No diplomacy. A direct, calculated response, delivered exactly where it would hurt the most. In front of the same fans, on the same pitch, inside the same stadium that had mocked him with a banner featuring his rival's trophy. For Brazilian fans who had spent a year and a half stewing over that "Stop Crying" banner and Rodri's casual very good approval of it, this felt like justice, like watching the universe correct itself in real time. It wasn't just a goal, it was closure, and it was public. Since that original Ballon d'Or ceremony back in 2024, Rodri has remained one of the most consistently targeted footballers on Brazilian social media. Every post about him flooded with comments dragging up the ceremony, the restaurant chant, the focus on football comment, and the Etihad banner, regardless of what he's actually done that week on the pitch. Every time Manchester City and Real Madrid meet, every time either player gives an interview that even brushes against the topic, the entire saga resurfaces instantly, trending all over again like no time has passed at all. Which brings us right back to where we started, a possible World Cup final in 2026, Spain against Argentina, Rodri lining up in that Spanish midfield, and millions of Brazilians who have zero stake in that final, quietly hoping he walks away without the trophy anyway. February 2025. Manchester City host Real Madrid in the Champions League, and the atmosphere before kickoff already feels loaded. Vinícius had just won FIFA's The Best Award, reigniting the entire "who's actually the best player in the world" debate all over again. Before the match even kicked off, Manchester City's official account posted an image on social media placing Vinícius near a photo of Rodri kissing the Ballon d'Or trophy. It was deleted almost immediately, but not before screenshots spread across every football account on the internet, confirming to Brazilian fans that this wasn't just fan-driven animosity anymore, it was coming from inside the club itself. Then came kick-off. and City supporters unveiled a massive banner in the stands featuring Rodri holding the Ballon d'Or with the words, "Stop crying with all your heart," a line lifted straight from Oasis, referencing Vinícius's public reaction to losing the award. Every single time Vinícius touched the ball that night, he was booed by the home crowd. 60,000 people jeering one player every touch, every dribble, every run. Most players wilt under that kind of pressure. Vinícius did the opposite. He kissed the crest on his shirt, showing Real Madrid's 15 European Cups, danced past defenders under a wall of boos, and walked away with the Man of the Match award as Real Madrid won 3-2. After the match, he was calm, almost surgical in his response. Every game is a new story where I can show my potential and everything I've been doing on the pitch. I've never been afraid of any crowd, never been afraid of anything that happens on the pitch. And with every single thing the opposing fans do, I get more emotional, I get more motivated to score and to have a great match. Meanwhile, Rodri, when asked directly by Spanish media what he thought of the crying banner aimed at Vinícius, didn't distance himself from it. He simply said, "Very good," approving the mockery in real time, live on Spanish television for everyone to hear. That one word, "very good," became a permanent exhibit in Brazil's case against Rodri, replayed endlessly whenever his name trended online. But the story wasn't over. A year later, Vinícius would get his chance to respond, not with words this time, but with a celebration that said everything. That baggage was about to walk straight into the Etihad Stadium a few months later, where the rivalry stopped living online and started playing out in front of 60,000 people inside one of the most hostile atmospheres of the entire season. Quick pause before we get into the Etihad Stadium chaos, because this next chapter is where things get physical, where banners get unveiled, and where Vinícius gives one of the most defiant answers of his career. If you're enjoying how deep this breakdown goes, smash that like button right now. It genuinely helps this video reach more football fans. And hit subscribe if you haven't already, because we cover the stories, rivalries and controversies the mainstream football media glosses over.
All right, let's get into the night Manchester City turned an entire stadium against one man.
That baggage was about to walk straight into the Etihad Stadium a few months later, where the rivalry stopped living online and started playing out in front of 60,000 people inside one of the most hostile atmospheres of the entire season. Quick pause before we get into the Etihad Stadium chaos, because this next chapter is where things get physical, where banners get unveiled, and where Vinícius gives one of the most defiant answers of his career. If you're enjoying how deep this breakdown goes, smash that like button right now. It genuinely helps this video reach more football fans. And hit subscribe if you haven't already, because we cover the stories, rivalries and controversies the mainstream football media glosses over.
All right, let's get into the night Manchester City turned an entire stadium against one man.
Just days after the ceremony, Rodri's name started circulating as a potential Real Madrid target, and in the middle of discussing that possibility, he dropped a comment that reignited everything. Speaking about Vinícius, he said, "Vini is one of the best players in the world. I think he's a smart guy, and with time he'll realize that the more focused he is on the pitch, the better it will be. He has things to improve like everyone. He's young and will have people to advise him, especially being at Real Madrid. It's a club with values, that's the little I can say. Athletes aren't just what they represent on the pitch, but also off it." Read that quote slowly, and you'll understand why it detonated online. On the surface, it sounds diplomatic. Underneath it, Brazilian fans heard something completely different. A suggestion that Vinícius, one of the most targeted players in modern football history when it comes to racist abuse, should simply stay quiet, stop speaking out, and just play. To a fan base that had watched Vinícius use his platform to call out racism at Spanish stadiums for years, this felt like being told to sit down and shut up, dressed up in polite language. It didn't take long for the backlash to reach the Brazilian national team itself. Neymar, Vinícius's close friend and national teammate, jumped straight into the replies with a sharp, sarcastic jab. Turned into the talker now, followed by laughing emojis, publicly mocking Rodri's sudden willingness to comment on someone else's career and conduct. When Neymar steps into a beef like that, it stops being a fringe internet argument. It becomes a national team storyline, discussed on Brazilian sports channels, debated by pundits who had covered both players for years. Rodri had gone from the guy who won an award to the guy who keeps talking about Vini in the span of 1 week, and Brazilian football culture doesn't forget receipts like that. Every future headline involving either player from that point forward would carry this baggage. They are not ready, the statement changed everything. Within hours of Rodri lifting that trophy, Vinícius Júnior posted a message that instantly went viral across every continent.
I will do it 10 times if necessary. They are not ready.
No explanation needed for anyone who had followed his career. This wasn't just a wounded athlete venting about losing an award. Vinícius had spent years being racially abused on pitches across Spain, filing complaints, testifying, becoming the face of a fight against discrimination that extended far beyond football. So when he wrote those words, Brazilian fans didn't read them as sour grapes. They read them as a declaration, a promise that no matter how many obstacles, snubs, or hostile stadiums stood in his way, he would keep winning, keep proving himself, keep forcing the football world to reckon with what he represented. That post reframed the entire Ballon d'Or conversation overnight. It was no longer just about stats, trophies, or midfielders versus attackers. For a massive portion of the Brazilian public, this became a conversation about respect, about whether a black Brazilian superstar fighting racism on the pitch was ever going to get a fair shake from European football's biggest institutions.
The tandem train, whether he intended it or not, became the face standing on the other side of that conversation.
He hadn't said anything provocative that night. He'd barely spoken about Vinícius at all. But symbolically, he was now wearing the trophy that millions of people believed belonged to someone else, for reasons that went deeper than football. That's an impossible position for any athlete to be in, and it planted a seed of resentment that was about to get watered by something far more direct than a social media post. Because while the statement was still trending worldwide, cameras were already rolling inside a restaurant in Paris, capturing a moment that would take this entire situation from symbolic to deeply, undeniably personal. What happened at that table didn't just add fuel to the fire. It practically lit a second one. The night Paris broke the internet. October 28th, 2024, the Théâtre du Châtelet in Paris. Rodri walks up, receives the Ballon d'Or, and instantly becomes the first defensive midfielder in over a decade to win football's most prestigious individual award. On paper, his season was undeniable. Premier League champion with Manchester City, Champions League runs, and the engine room behind Spain's Euro 2024 triumph. He barely missed a beat all year. Standing at a podium, visibly moved, he said something that sounded almost like a peace offering. Football won in the sense that many times the figure of other positions isn't very rewarded. Football is beautiful in every position. A humble line, a midfielder's tribute to unsung roles. But almost nobody in Brazil was listening to that quote because the entire country's attention was locked onto one empty seat in that room. Vinícius Júnior wasn't just a nominee that year, he was, according to a huge chunk of the international press, the favourite. A Champions League title with Real Madrid, a La Liga crown, and performances that had pundits across Europe calling him the most electrifying attacker on the continent. So when Rodri's name was read out instead of his, it didn't feel like a football decision to millions of fans. It felt like a robbery. And the fact that Real Madrid's own delegation had already cancelled their trip to Paris before the ceremony even started, after being tipped off that Vinícius wouldn't win, only poured gasoline on a fire that was already spreading. That single logistical decision by one of the biggest clubs on the planet told Brazilian fans everything they needed to know before a single word was even spoken on stage. The snub was real, and it was intentional. What came next wasn't just disappointment, it was outrage, and it didn't stay contained to football forums or fan pages. It went straight to the top, straight to Vinícius himself, and straight into a statement that would echo across the sport for years to come. Stick around, because Chapter 3 is where this stops being a footballing disagreement and turns into something much bigger than the sport itself. WHY Brazil hates Rodri. The Ballon d'Or war, nobody forego. Picture this, it's July 2026, the World Cup final. Spain against Argentina, and standing right in the middle of that Spanish midfield is Rodri, the reigning Ballon d'Or winner, the best footballer on the planet according to France Football. Now here's the twist nobody outside football saw coming. Millions of Brazilian fans, people who have absolutely nothing invested in this final, will be quietly rooting against him. Not against Spain, against him. One man. Why would an entire footballing nation, obsessed with the sport more than almost anyone on earth, carry a grudge into a World Cup final they're not even part of? The answer isn't really about football tactics or trophies. It's about one night in Paris in October 2024 that split the football world in half and turned a respected defensive midfielder into one of the most despised names on Brazilian social media. This is the story of how Rodri became public enemy number one in Brazil, how Vinícius Júnior became the symbol of an entire country's frustration, and how a golden trophy turned into a battlefield that spilled into restaurants, stadiums, banners, and post-match interviews for 2 straight years. Before we get into the receipts, the quotes, and the chants that made this rivalry explode, hit that subscribe button, because this channel breaks down the stories mainstream football media is too scared to fully unpack. Now, let's go back to where it all started. The night the Ballon d'Or ceremony stopped being about football and started being about something far messier. Everyone expected fireworks that night in Paris, but nobody expected the fuse to still be burning 2 years later. What happened inside that ceremony room, and more importantly, what happened right after the cameras stopped rolling, is where the real story begins. Because the award itself was only the spark. The explosion came from what followed it.